Okay, so I'm Bob, compulsive eater, alcoholic, and I want people to like me. So to get started with, and again, let me just say happy Valentine's Day to everybody. Happy Valentine's Day. So the topic today is fear not. Now, I like to be happy and joyous things we talk about here. But the whole thing is, if we fear not, then we can be happy, right? Because the whole thing in our lives is the self-centered fear. You know, it talks about, let me just read from the big book on page 67. It says, if you go back to the bottom of the page, notice the word fear bracketed alongside the difficulties. And then it goes on to say, this is the short word, somehow touches about every aspect of our lives. It was an evil and corroding thread. The fabric of our existence was shot through with it. So, we have what's called self-centered fear, and it talks about throughout the book. And if you look on page 65, where it has the line of all, step 4, and it talks about the columns. And if you notice on the right side on page 65, the word fear is bracketed. Okay? So, the whole thing, it says it's this corroding and self-centeredness, and it has to do with this thread throughout our lives. So, okay. So, it doesn't use the word here. Look, I always like to get to the solution quickly and right away, So, we were talking before, when we were talking, joking around before, and, hey, she missed a few meetings, so I did a recap. I said, just surrender, let go. That's the whole meeting, okay? So this program it's really, really simple. So when you get down to it, it's saying we have this self-centered fear. But again, it uses the word self there. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that's on page 62. So what is the solution, and what do the steps talk about? They talk about getting out of the self. Losing the self to find the self. So to get right to the point, to have that spiritual awakening is when I realized that my thinking and myself was false, that the ego would bring me to being upset, restless, irritable, and discontent every time. So until I realized where the problem was, I couldn't resolve it. So when I realized, and I always start out the meeting, say the problem is me, right? When I realized where the problem was, it's all resolved. So like I said, the topic of the meeting is fear not, and I always like to be, happy in the meeting and, enjoying life and things like that. But the thing that's keeping us from enjoying life is the self-centered fear, okay? And it's the pride, it's the ego, it's the self. So when we lose, hey, look, if you lose the self, like when I lose Bob, then there's nothing to fear anymore, because my whole fear was related to Bob, feeling I was the center of the universe. So here we go. To get out of the self, to get rid of the fear, anxiety, being depressed today, it's getting out of self, because the self is thinking about the past, or it's thinking about the future. It's never in the present. The biggest thing that the ego hates is when we're in the present. We're enjoying the present, the fear goes away, because the ego isn't there anymore. The ego is always worried about, like I say, the anxiety of future, or something of guilt, remorse, the shame of the past, all these defects of character. So people feel, we do step 4, we work on these things our whole lives. But it's really, really a simple program, that spiritual awakening. Bill and Bob, Bill had a sudden shift in thinking. They talk about in a lot of religions, and we even talk on here on page 63, being reborn. So we have that ability to be reborn, change our thinking. It's basically not making ourselves a higher power. When we're making ourselves trying to figure it out, trying to analyze situations, trying to relive them. I always talk about planning the past, right? Or regretting the future. You ever planning the past, or are you ever regretting the future? So the way out, and it talks about in this book, so it's telling us the thing about fear. But interestingly, on page 68, what does it tell us? It tells us a solution to our fear. So if we bring this in, again, I always say this at meetings, if you bring this into your heart right now, you might have heard it for 10, 20, how many ever years you've been doing the 12 steps, but you brought it here intellectually and tried to figure it out. Again, like I said in the very beginning of the meeting, I was joking around with somebody who wasn't here for a meeting or two, and I said, I'll give you the recap of the whole meeting, letting go. The whole thing with religions, and I always say this, these steps, it's not AA or OA or these 12-step programs aren't necessarily a cult like people like to say it is. It's based on all the fundamental philosophies and religions. Eastern, Western religions, philosophy. Even step 11 talks about that prayer meditation. I'm telling you, if you want to be a philosopher in life, you want to be happy in life, you want to be joyous, you want to be free, work these 12 steps. I dare you to pick up any religious book, any philosophy, and you can read it. And in the first part of this big book, everything is in here that they talk about. And, even things like step 4 about confession, right? Step 3, letting go, bringing faith of God in, this deity, this higher power. In a lot of Eastern religions, they talk about the energy, the Tao around us, all of these things, right? It all letting the flow, the power come in. It talks about on page 63. Anything you could relate or want to say, or any philosophy, ancient Greek philosophies, Stoicism, anything, the ancient Greeks, Aristotle, Socrates, it's all in here. Isn't that totally amazing? But yet, to find this, we had to go to basement of churches, right? Where do you find things? People look and they go in all these PhDs, great philosophy books. They go pay a lot of money for all of these things. Never mind, we'll talk about the diet programs trying to figure it out. And here we have all the answers right in front of us in this book here. It's pretty amazing. What is on page 63? It says, before the third step prayer, when we felt new power, it's in the middle of the first paragraph, new power flow in and enjoyed peace of mind. We discovered we could face life successfully. We became conscious of his presence. We began to lose fear. I'm telling you, the basis of this whole meeting was talking about fear not. Fear of today, tomorrow, the hereafter. But no, we don't let that higher consciousness, higher power come in. Our defects of character, worrying about the self. Page 62, read it there. It says selfishness, self-centeredness. That was the cause of our problem. So if we want to be happy, joyous and free, enjoy life, getting out of our addictions to food, to alcohol, to drugs, to people. When we talk about step 4, resentment, it's all related to people and situations. And it's all related to the self, 62 says. It tells us the problem. Selfishness, self-centeredness. This book, it's all here. The answers are clearly right in front of us. But no, you could go, we need a book here, 600 pages. Not to say the big book is bad or wrong. And again, I always say, I have millions of self-help books. I have shelves full of them. And you know what I found out? Every book says the same thing. Every book says the same thing. But it's all here. These are the instructions on how to have that spiritual awakening. And anybody who's here about the food and you want clarity about food, get out of the self already. The ego wants more success, more money, more big plates of food, right? The ego knows how to satisfy itself. But everything, when we listen to the ego, it's the big lie. It's all falseness. Because why? When we grew up, it's what our parents told us. It's what people, it's just society told us. Hey, with the food, society tells us on the TV, internet, going down the highway, and they even play these songs, the siren calls, the food calls. They're getting you addicted. They make the food addictive substances. The bad part about the food, physically it kills us. I had a meeting here, you talk about alcohol and drugs. A lot of us were addicted and had that problem. And it's a shame. A lot of people have drug overdoses and they have these problems. But does it compare at all to the food? And no. But the problem is also that with the food, the government even, the billion-dollar industries, they sit there, the psychologists, the scientists trying to figure out how they could get us addicted. So if you want to be free, look, I'm talking about the food here, but I'm talking all in life. If you have fear, you're in prison in the mind. It's all perception. 95% of our problems are related to perception in life. If I have a problem today, I'm the problem. It's looking at life, that change of thinking. So we have this new consciousness, getting out of the old self, and religions talk about being renewed and reborn. That's the whole answer. Once we know the answer then it comes to us. We don't have to do it anymore. We don't have to try to be likable. We could be likable people. We don't have to try. Trying isn't in one of the steps. Because every time we try, it's self-will. With the dieting, it's self-will. I'll have this much portion. Or the billion-dollar industries are saying to you, look, I'm going to send you a smaller portion of the same poisonous, high-caloric foods you've been getting all along. That's their resolution to this problem. And we feed into it. We feel, okay, if I have less of this and a smaller piece of a sweet type of food, that will resolve my problem. No, when we get God consciousness, when we want wholesome food, go in the supermarket, pick it up, it has 25 to 50 ingredients in it, right? Do you want that shift of thinking? In page 25, it tells us what happens when we do these steps in relation to our addiction. Go to page 25. That the great fact is just this, in the third paragraph down, that we've had deep and effective spiritual experiences which have revolutionized our whole attitude towards life, towards our fellows, towards life, towards our thinking about the clarity again with the food, okay? The clarity.